There aren't really any announcements except to tell you that we're not meeting next week because it's Easter and Passover and we'll all be busy doing other things. But then we'll be back again the week after. Okay, so get ready for our poetic opener. So tonight is Ajit Gandhi. And here's what we know about Ajit. Whenever there is a poem, it is a frenzy of 10 to 15 minutes, fulfilling and becoming the best part of the day or week, sometimes months. And then he waits for the next one. So Ajit loves comic books, always has, and should have been writing and illustrating them. Alternative reality that didn't materialize. But he's become a poet, and we welcome him and his new voice, Jerome.
I hope I don't destroy your poems. All right. This first poem is called Bodhi Tree's Monologue. At some point aware, his pressing where I meet the earth, breathing through apparatus, not the skin. They rarely stop in tree elongated time, transience in movement. This king seems wrecked in their vernacular. Does he seek to be my study? Does offer me himself, his bark encased in fruit skin, pliant flesh, his thoughts? Am I offered time in our scale? Others in transient drop seedlings, nourishment in from kin form. His ingestion, is it a calling to my curiosity? Why me? A task. A steady state enthused being of the moving tribe. I comply, grove him in. Contour and method, his form, his weak inner bark, bones I will learn. Maybe assist in weaning him off the seedling that seek moist ground. Sustenance rubbed in, osmosis seeped where we touch. Help in spacing the swelling and subsiding of apratic oxygenation. Do I dare my sap in his vessels? Tiny soldiers I send in, map his proffered physiognomy. Ayahuasca cousin recipes, intervened with intrusive intent. I give to take a map, opportunity for our cyclopedia, his stillness, his gift to ours. I know him now, we will know him now, we will know them now. Our sensory precepts I show him, we remember when we came and how, now he knows too, but he merges their coming, he knows more. Adnan Pradnan, give and take. Will this have repercussions? He now expresses I live in him, but I can't stay, I will be expelled. He moves to express, steady one with me in him. At some point, he lays to dust, but other transients come and touch, so fleeting, no time in which I can sing as I sang to him. My kindred trees around me recede. I am encased in his expression of me, I think. To my kind, I send his kind's concepts. We worry, but we lounge, albeit smaller in number, retentive of ours, in his there coming and going. In my wait, all other roots that reached to me dry, die out. They have no trunks to feed. Underground, I stay still, stop my growth where brittle tubers touch me. I seek signs in them of life. I live but seek renewal. All things living, as an eventuality, become heavy with age. I will snap in parts or wholly, what then? The transient I nourished, who took my word, his disciples scurry, I pin on them, what? As they pin supports to my weight. Somehow now what I need, know what we all need for now. Just stay, just wait. This is called A Soul Culminated. Abseiling soft curves reach cloistered recesses of her soul's sinews, muscle beneath the down-textured skin, friction feathering, leaving no blisters on seeing fingers, fissionable arousal on tips. Looking up is no use. Having repelled to this depth, settle in, acquaint with the torus of wishes, whims that circle and swim. Astral presence from dreams actualized in a hip swaying feline from the dance floor. This is where she'll keep me. Companion to her clitoral, to meditative zen, I'll stay. Tap to an individualized circadian heaval that will rock the stamen at beck. When the pistil fruit bearing is moistly seeded, I'll stay. In this depth, there are desires, errands, stitches to the toroidal wall. In the magnetic flux dwelling, the spin is perpetual in talks to the bone. I stay and hold on. The seeded drop-offs with clingy limbs do a dance familial to feline hip sashaying from the dance floor. A chorus is on the brain, hold tight. Mobius links in a silver chain taut on just below her belly button, glimpsed as last button bloused. I cling. A soul, its abyss and carmine to light, bending scarlet lips that crown its apex. I cling. How's my time? Okay. This last poem is called Ant and Ink. As an ant dipped in ink, let loose on paper, I was troubled by the white reflecting all. Stride became purposed, since ink color is absorbed, affecting change. The paper hereto, two-dimensioned, the third laden on my back, usurp the viewer, bend to will, tool. Initial meanderings collate, furthered to collegiate. Over time, feel eyes on me, better not wither. Coagulate prior to the fourth, washing away my imprint.
Thank you so much, Jerome. And thank you, Ajit, for your words and your poetry. And so everything fine on Zoom out there? They don't answer back. Okay, so tonight we have as our featured reader. It's a wonderful and special occasion. So I would like to introduce you to Jónína Kirton. Here she is. Hold on. I have stuff to say about you first. She's a Red River Métis and Icelandic poet. She received the 2016 Vancouver Mayor's Arts Award for an emerging artist in the literary arts category. Her second collection of poetry, called An Honest Woman, was a finalist in the 2018 Dorothy Livesay Poetry Prize. And she just released her third book, Standing in a River of Time, which she has for sale. How much is it?
$20.
So $20. You want to shake it around? It's a beautiful, beautiful cover. There we go. And you can, she'll have them for sale after the reading and you can go and get one. So Standing in a River of Time merges poetry and lyrical memoir on a journey exposing the intergenerational effects of colonization on a Métis family. The ancestors whisper to Kirton throughout, asking her to heal, to bring them home, so that within these stories of redemption and loss, the dead walk with us, their presence felt as the story unfurls in unexpected ways. Kirton does not offer false hope, nor does she push us toward answers we are not yet ready for. So a little bit from an interview with Rob Taylor. He's terrific.
Yes.
If ever you have read his interviews, they're great. So Rob asks, though the truth is impossible to achieve, are there ways that poetry more effectively approaches it than prose, or vice versa? Good question, huh? And so this is Jónína's response. If I could just let myself go and write, the truth reveals itself to me. I am often surprised by what comes out, and it is through poetry that the most startling things usually present themselves. Perhaps this is because I feel safer writing about abuse and things like metaphysical experiences, visits with the dead, etc., through poetry. My body knows more than I do. It holds ancestral memory, what some call blood memory, and it also holds the cellular memory of my own life. It usually speaks to me through metaphor and images, which lend themselves to poetry. But I did break with this tradition in the book. So it's a little bit of poetry, a little bit of prose memoir. The poem is the container, the space and opportunity for people to gather in community. All right, introducing. Looking forward to hearing Jónína.
Thank you. Well, I'm going to set my timer because I'm not a very good timekeeper, and I can plan what I'm going to say, but I might yammer on and suddenly be out of time. So I'll keep a watch on that. I first want to say thank you for having me, and thank you for this beautiful evening. I've been sitting there thinking how wonderful this location is and how beautiful it feels to be here, and how wonderful it is to hear everyone's poetry. And sometimes it's a story about themselves or things that they're thinking of, and how deep that urge is within us to share stories, whether they're real or whether there's something we've made up. And poetry can be very good for that. And so, because little snippets, right? So the open mic, you can do 3 minutes. If it was fiction, nonfiction, that'd be tough, wouldn't it? So I love that we got to have this sense of who's in the room. And I often think about that when I do a reading. I think about who I'm bringing with me. And I do believe I'm bringing my ancestors with me. And they were quite noisy at one point in my life. And I believe that's one reason why I ended up writing this book. They had things they wanted to say. They had things they wanted me to look into. They had things they wanted me to not just say publicly, but to my own family. So this book is a third book. It's supposed to be poetry. Signed a contract for a poetry book with Talon Books and thought, okay, I'll just write one section of prose for the beginning of the poetry. Just set things up, talk about my mother's passing, because that was a big change in my life when my mother died when I was 31. And so I wrote that prose section, and then before I knew it, there was more and more and more that just kept wanting to come out. So I went with what my writing mentor says, Betsy Warland. She says, let the narrative lead. And so I let it lead me through prose when it needed to be prose, and then poetry. So it was a bit of a risky book, and Talon said, sure, fine, go ahead. And they published it. And it's really just a book of poetry, but it's not really, it's both. So it's in sections, and it's documenting my life in many ways. And one thing that for me, growing up, I had no idea about colonization. I had no idea even that we were Métis. I thought we were part Native, and I thought that we weren't supposed to, I knew we weren't supposed to talk about it. And my parents told me, well, my mother told me, it really doesn't matter. It's like this one person way back when, and we'll just forget about that. And my father, turns out, both of his parents were Métis, Red River Métis. So it wasn't just one, there's many Indigenous people and many generations of Métis marrying Métis. So here I am, not knowing that. not understanding colonization, not understanding the world that my father's living in, not understanding the obsession with your hair has to look right. There's no way you can be dirty. I mean, that would just be out of the question. And so we had to really walk this respectability politics, they call it. But a lot of things happened. So this book documents some of that. And so this is the beginning of my life. So this poem is a little bit about some of the things that happened at the beginning. It's called Seekers. These people swimming, all 6 of them, until one drowns, threatens to pull the others down. In the riptide of loss, there were no instructions in the holy book, none that pertained to the mixing of blood. Yet mother insisted we go to church, where she placed a plaque for Gordon, the altar boy the river took. She kept praying as we all headed for the rapids, caught in the turbulence of father's rage. Murray decided to head for the shore. Just 18, he drove his truck across the country to join the P&E. Once there, he noticed he did not fit and did not feel safe. His calls to me, his big sister, frantic, fear had him. Soon he was seeking safety at our uncle's ranch, where he did not drown, but was shot, leaving an unfillable hole in him. His return home in a box, greeted at the airport by my father, mother's tears flooding all the rooms of our home. Now we were all drowning. So this happened, of course, before my mother passed away. And then shortly after this, my mother passed away. So I was quite shook by all that, needless to say. And also having grown up in a rather violent and abusive home. So as a young woman, I'm entering the world that way, not knowing about the murdered, missing Indigenous women and girls, not understanding how vulnerable I was. And I didn't even have the support of my father because he rejected me. So I'm quite confused at this point. And so this poem is about that part, but also about the feeling of being untethered. So I'm untethered to my own family. I'm not tethered to the Métis people. I'm Icelandic. My first name is my other grandmother's name. I don't know that language. I don't even know very much about it. So I've got all this culture that just one generation, we lost all of that. So this is called Untethered. Is it my blood that makes me wander? The diaspora of my soul scattered over many lands. The bones of my ancestors, how they pull on me, offering so many directions. Yet how can I answer the many folded inside my body? This body not my own, a shared place of suffering, it searches for safety, looks for a cord tying me to you, and to you. Yet soon we will all leave this room, leave each other. It is then that I will feel how alone I am in the territory of the Salish, with the bones of my ancestors scattered over many lands. Some just north of here, Fort St. James, the place where many lay. Others can be found at Turtle Mountain, the prairies, L'Anse Meadows, and Iceland. As I trace their steps, I feel them beside me, whispering, look here. Comes another voice, no, here. Their stories forgotten, they ask me to sing home their bones, to find them in the stories of our people. They ask me to tether myself to them and to the stories. A chain unbroken, we are stronger. The stories of those that came before the link. Untethered, we are lost. But if we are patient in our searching, we may find a way out of this place of loss, out of the wandering that comes when one does not know the stories of their ancestors. Every time I read that poem, I think of the people I know who are 60s scoop and how they may not know the stories of their ancestors and how difficult that must be. And I know what a hole that leaves for some people. But I also know that our ancestors can speak with us and are with us. And so I really strongly believe that that's there and that memory is there too of our ancestors. And when I was reading Jean Tallé's book, The Northwest is Our Mother, that really spoke to me. And I suddenly had this really wonderful revelation about who I come from and how strongly we're. And it's been very, very interesting doing the research, reading books like hers, talking to my dad's cousins, who tells me that I sat on my great-grandfather's knee, that he sang to me in Métis. And no wonder when I hear those words, something happens for me. It's not just blood memory, it's also that I have a body memory of being with this wonderful man who loved poetry. Apparently he recited poetry all the time. So this is who I come from. So I'm also the daughter of a man who is very pained, and I really love my dad. I really want people to know that, and sometimes I feel a little embarrassed of speaking so many of his stories that were not favorable. So I tell on myself too, just to try to make up for that. So you'll read things about me in here that are shocking too. So this is a poem about how lost I felt. It's called I Am. I am the daughter of a shapeshifter, a loon weeping in the night, casting spells on all who listen. I am the daughter of a shapeshifter, a black-billed magpie following, waiting for scraps from buffalo hunts. I am the daughter of a shapeshifter, building a mud hut dome near the ocean. Most days I hide until night. I am the daughter of a shapeshifter, thrice burned, thrice reborn. I avoid the light. So there was a time I was very shy. I thought I was shy. I'm sort of having second thoughts on that assessment. I was terrified, traumatized. And so my position in life was to just make sure that I didn't draw any attention to myself. And here I am now, a writer. And here I am standing in front of people. That took some time, believe me, to get comfortable with that. So I really just wanted to disappear most of my life. And that was a feeling that was really strong. And like many people who live in with that type of trauma, there's also sort of self-abuse that takes place. And so this is a poem kind of poking fun at that. I know it's a serious issue, but I do sometimes like to poke fun at things that are serious. I think that's a Métis thing, isn't it? Nodding to my Métis friend at the back. So it's called Nibbles. I've been feeding on my own body. It began with my toes. Surely no one will know. This I can hide. Just one toe, the big one. It was only meant to pacify, but soon there were urges to nibble just a little. Small bites, the way a lover might nip at your neck, not too hard, just enough to bring electricity to the skin, just enough to remove numbness. Over time, I needed more. The bites became blood sport, teeth marks I can hide inside my shoes. Like the snake swallowing its tail, I'm becoming a circular version of myself. When in public, I bite my baby finger. I have found that I can disappear into the throbbing of digits. Like the snake swallowing her tail, I am becoming a circular version of myself. I did bite my baby finger. I could never get my toe in my mouth. That would be something. Even when young, I was never that flexible. It's funny the things that come to you when you're a writer, and you have to trust those things. Like sometimes you could reject them out of hand and go, that's ridiculous, right? And in a way, yeah, it's kind of ridiculous thinking about, biting on your toe. But it makes for a decent poem, I think. So we have to trust ourselves. So I'm also a mother, which is one of the best things I've ever done. One of the hardest things I've ever done. And my son, he just had a baby. So now I'm a grandmother, and this is very, very exciting. So there's a chapter that's devoted to him a little bit, and I won't read you any of the prose because it is a poetry reading, right? But this chapter is called Rebirth, We All Come From Somewhere. And it's about my experiences with rebirthing. Any rebirthers in the room? Anybody been through rebirthing? I think it's somewhat obscure, like many things that I end up doing. You're taken back to your birth with a practitioner, and this one particular practitioner I worked with was amazing. And she even would have you in water sometimes, which really facilitated that. And our births are traumatic. And so it takes you back to that, but also it's deeper than that. She asked me after the end of one session, what was the message when you got here? Like, what was your mother's message to you? And just right out of my mouth, I knew right away what it was. It was, I'm glad you're here and now you can take care of me. And that's pretty much what my life was like with her. And I adore her. So it's not a complaint. I liked taking care of her. So this is about my son. And I did meet him while in a rebirthing session. This is before he was born, obviously. So this is a little bit about him. One's called umbilical. So they're like sections. So I'll go 1, 2. So 1, a navel string connecting us, delivering sustenance until shock of light awakens me. Doctors, nurses in masks, surround sound words delivered. It's a girl. Liquid born, I linger on the edges of what I know about my mother, the way she held me within her womb. I have wondered, did she want me? I do recall her saying the best days of my life were the days my children were born. Tied to us, she could not leave. 3. Firstborn, the only girl, I held potential, egg-filled promises of love, delivered faulty fetuses until one managed to hold on. My son, I wanted a water birth for you, no shock of light or masked faces. I wanted to welcome you, but once you arrived, I could not hold on to you. Arms, knees shaking, I vibrated not loss, mourned the absence of water, the crooked path down a canal too narrow. I give thanks that you made it, son. Now that you are here and I am alone, ghosts linger, nibble on your toes, whisper in my ear, reminding me of my mother's words, my mother's love. She too is glad you are here. So my mother never got to meet my son because he was born years after she passed. And I sometimes wondered if he was her, and you'll see why in this poem. This one's called Samsara. Again, it's got some sections. So 1. Mother, I have lost my place. It's dark here, mother. Without you, the earth is damp, made thin by loss. I am cold, in need of shelter. 2. I have a son now, mother. He swims within me. I must build a fire, light the way for your return. 3. He cautions me in the kitchen when I'm angry. His small finger pointing at me, he says, I used to be your mother. 4. I hear a cry. He has touched a hot iron, his lips pouting. He has that, why would that thing want to hurt me look. I scoop him up, rush to the rocking chair where I cradle him while he cries, then pauses just once to say, your mother never did this, did she? How does he know this? Was he a toddler remembering another life? I don't know, but he was always reminding me that he is not just a child, but the wheel turns. And he really was a remarkable little boy and still is quite a beautiful young man. So the book covers some trauma, but it also covers quite a bit of healing, like how I managed to come out of the things that happened to me in a somewhat decent way. I only began writing at 50. I think I did years and years and years and years of therapy and all kinds of meditation groups, you name it, I tried it because I was just really desperate to heal. But writing seems to have really been one of the most healing things I've done. And so, but also documenting things that I've tried. So this is about walking the labyrinth with some women that I've been walking with for about 14 years. It's called Together We Walk the Labyrinth. In this shared silence, there are rounded corners where bodies circle circles within circles. Our bodies fluid, opening to each other, we become rounded corners. No sharp turns here. Only prayers filling the walls, filling our hearts. Once at the center, we wait, eyes closed, we feel bodies passing, bodies turning in the softening of rounded corners. One foot in front of the other, we walk towards peace. In the background, the faint sounds of piano keys. The chords of our longing have become a song. Our pain put on pause, some left in the rounded corners, where the softening edges, the sound of the piano, show us another way through the maze of emotions each day brings. Heads bowed, we give thanks for the healing the circling brings. Together we walk in this prayer-filled room, a place where many are answered. All outside sounds muted by meditation, and even if jarring, they become music. Turning us inward, moving us away from resistance, mind emptied. We retrace our steps. Our bodies filled with light, we walk in the quiet of our yearning for stillness. Our questions answered, we are nourished. It will now be easier to lead with love. And when we forget, eyes closed, we will remember the sharing of silence, the walk towards peace. So those same women, I'm in a group with called Writing from the Body. And so we meet, usually we do 8 to 10 week periods of time where we commit to each other. And we've been doing that off and on, led by Ingrid Rose. And she does this thing called Writing from the Body. So a lot of my work is really centered around the body because we're working with her for 14 years now. And with these women, most of whom are older than me. And what a blessing that is. You know, they have so much life experience and their writing is beautiful. And I don't think any of them are publishing, or if they are, they've just started to. Like myself, they're late bloomers. I'm very grateful for them. And so I will close with a poem, 2 poems actually. One that I wrote for my niece, Gabby. She's just 18. I wrote this for her when she was 16. She had been contacting me and asking me questions, and she was quite curious. So between her and I, there's 50 years. And when there's been no women between me and her. So all of my brother had boys, I had a boy, and we just seemed to have boys. And so this girl finally showed up. I was very, very happy about that. My son's had a boy too. So she's kind of special to me. And when she was born, my dad called me, which is just never happens. He does not call me. He never has. Called me the second she was born to tell me she looked just like me. So she's quite interested in our Métis ancestry. So this one is called Rooted, and it's for Gabby. It begins with a quote that she'd sent me from Virginia Woolf. I am rooted, but I flow. And at 16, she said, I am rooted, but I flow and I grow, which I think is really lovely for a 16-year-old. So I am a story within the stories of many. I am a paradox, one thing and then another, parts of a whole that does not know itself. Turning towards the invisible, I could see the limits of knowledge, the places where formulas dissolve into knowing that can only come when quiet and walking in a forest where the standing ones watch and wait for us to return to ourselves, to the new stories that are waiting to unfold. So as sad as my story might have been, there's lots of joy in there as well. But also now we have the new generations that are going to write new stories for us. And I can't wait to see what little Gabby's going to get up to. And her brother Caleb is now taking some courses, and he writes his auntie and asks her for assistance. And I think that's just so cool. And now we have this grandson who's just born. So, you know, it's not done yet. We're going on. And so this is just closed with this poem that was in this Capilano Review, did this great 50th anniversary issue. It's a 3-parter, so I highly recommend it. So each of us got a letter, and then you got to pick a word. So I got E, and of course equity came to mind. And I wrote a couple of things for it, but I'll just read one poem. So I first wrote the poem complaining about the current equity situation, and then some prose about where I sort of situate myself. I come from, interestingly enough, the Icelandic family became quite wealthy. And so I have these people who grew up with nothing and no education and then became very wealthy and are very white. Saskatchewan farmer. And sometimes there's some disconnect between me and them. I love them dearly, but I've seen things that disturbed me around money. So I think this is my vision in this poem of what we could do, because I believe that we could do so much better. And I believe in your poems that you were sharing with us earlier, I forget how to say your name. Yeah, I think you probably would understand this vision from what you wrote. So we have this capacity to really attune ourselves to each other. And if we look at nature, nature is really in tune with each other, and none more so than starlings. They're so fascinating, right? And so this is what we can become. Consider the implications of rising. Starlings in the sky, we could fly, wordlessly wheeling our way, learning to live on the edge, letting go into the unknown, so that we might become responsive as starlings, undulating in unison, sharing an in-breath, folding into a small ball, and with a shared out-breath, simultaneously expanding, turning with no one leading. Together, shape-shifting, pulsating, singular, spectacular murmurations, rising iridescent symbols of what is possible. And I really believe we could do that. If you've been in circles with people, you can feel that synchronicity that we managed to create, that feeling of just being together and dropping all that pretense, and just something happens in those moments. And I think that we could do more of that. So that's what I'm hoping for in the future. Anyway, I really thank you all so much for your kind attention. It's been such a beautiful evening. I've loved listening to every single one of you. Yeah, I was just so struck by the wonder of the power of being together in this way. It's very powerful. I feel like crying, actually. So thank you so much for inviting me. And we got a nice little mini vacation, my husband and I. A nice Irish guy over there. Thank you so much.